Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast with Phil Graham. We help you master Facebook ads and give you an unfair advantage over your competition. Are you ready? Let's go.
How's it going, podcast family? Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast, episode 456. Phil Graham here. I've got a very important show for you guys today because I'm going to be talking about why your Facebook and Instagram ads stopped working and what you can do about it. You might have been running the same ads with the same offer in the same account, and then all of a sudden, things just feel off. Maybe nothing changed on your end, but your results went down. Or maybe you started from the beginning and results sucked from the very start. That can happen too. Here's the thing. Many times ads don't just necessarily break overnight. They can fade. And there's reasons for that. So instead of panicking, I want to give you guys some clarity today in this episode because maybe your ads stopped working, but maybe it wasn't even given a chance in the first place. Or maybe it's just going through a normal fluctuation. So let's talk about how to figure this out and what to do without panicking or potentially making some costly mistakes that a lot of advertisers make. So I'm glad you guys are here. It is February 3rd. How crazy is that, my friends? I'm going to jump right into the content, but before I do, if you guys are looking for some help with your ads, with trying to get customers and clients, with your AI, with your marketing, feel free to get in touch. PhilGrahamDigital.com is the website, or you can DM me on Instagram at PhilGrahamDigital, whether you're looking for some done-for-you services or some one-on-one coaching. Just go to PhilGrahamDigital.com. You can schedule a short Zoom call with me and let's connect. So let's talk about the first thing, which is really important, is that many times when you're running ads, they don't necessarily just stop working overnight and all of a sudden they're horrible. Sometimes they drift. Sometimes it's almost like a stock in the stock market. You know, they don't just always go up. Sometimes it fluctuates a little bit and it can be normal for ads to drift. And they very, very rarely will just immediately just be horrible overnight. I have had people come to me and say, I had this ad, it was working really well, and all of a sudden today it's doing horrible. Should I turn it off? And I'm like, well, how long have you been running it? It's only had one bad day? No, don't turn it off. It's way too soon. And obviously there's exceptions and variables if you have a huge budget, but just remember, it's normal for performance to fluctuate when you're running an ad. It has to cycle through a lot of people in the audience. And typically what I see with an ad that's not working, way more often than not, is a gradual decline. Much, much more common than something just immediately stopping working, which is not as common in terms of what I see. So you want to first try and avoid the mistake of thinking an ad isn't working if maybe it is, but it's just having a normal fluctuation. You got to be very, very careful with that. Now, let's talk about the 4 most common reasons that ads stop working. There's certainly a lot more reasons than 4, but these are some of the most common ones. And number 1 would be audience saturation and creative fatigue. So you could have a great audience, you could even have a great ad, but if they have seen that exact same ad 27 times in the last month, that's probably going to be a problem. It doesn't mean the ad is bad. It doesn't mean the audience is bad. It means you need to make some changes before they hate your guts if they don't already, because they're seeing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So you got to watch your frequency, which shows up in the ad stats. And there could be reasons to have higher frequency. Like, for example, I've had situations where performance was really good. So even though frequency was high, I could not turn it off because performance was too good. And there's other variables around that too. But in general, just in general, you know, you don't want to show the same person the same ad 49 times in a month. And so you really have to watch what's your audience size, what's the creative fatigue looking like, and the ad fatigue, not just creative fatigue, it's really ad fatigue. And what is that frequency, which does show up in the ad stats. So you could easily saturate your audience and show them the exact same thing way too often. And that's something that could be a valid reason why an ad would stop working. And then at that point, I mean, The solution is simple. You either change the audience and run the same ad, or you change the ad and run the new ad to the same audience, or both. So lots of good options there, but that's very common for an ad to stop working if there's a lot of ad fatigue, creative fatigue, and audience saturation. The second reason an ad might stop working pretty commonly is issues with the messaging. And this could happen. Maybe an ad started working, but then stopped, or maybe it just didn't work from the very start. So maybe your messaging is not on point. Maybe you don't have a good hook in your ad. Because if you don't hook somebody, if they don't see a reason in a split second to stop scrolling, then they're going to scroll right on by. And it doesn't matter if you have the best anything if they don't see it, if they don't know about it. So if you have bad or unoptimized messaging in your ad, and it's more about you than them, that can be a problem. I was working with a client just the other day, brand new client. This is a consulting client, so I'm not running the ads for them, but I'm coaching them on how to run it effectively themselves. And in our first call, I looked at what they were doing, did an audit, and their ads were a big issue. All of their ads started with what they were offering. It didn't start with who their customers and clients were and what their problems are that this client solves. So we had to make those changes. I could see why things were not working, but we were able to make those changes. And a big part of their issues were coming from their messaging in their ads, which, by the way, they had AI write a lot of these ads. I love AI. I'm an AI guy. I help a lot of businesses with AI, but there's also a lot of issues if you just use ad copy straight from AI without putting your own skill into it. So be very careful. But check your messaging if your ads are not working. Do you have a hook in the headline? Is there a hook in the first sentence of your main ad copy? Does the image or thumbnail of the video hook people as well? Or is it all just general stuff or stuff focused on you and your company instead of your customers and clients? Make sure, because this is one of the most common things I see so much. The next common reason why I see ads that are not working is too much optimization. So I see advertisers making constant tweaks to their ads. I'm talking about daily or every 2 or 3 days, and they don't even have a budget that's large. Like if you've got $100,000 a month or more, maybe, depending on the budget for your ad set, maybe you got to make quicker tweaks. But for most advertisers, that's crazy to be making tweaks if it hasn't even tested properly through your audience. You're just resetting the learning phase. You're just essentially shooting yourself in the foot. So if you're tweaking with the ads all the time, making changes all the time, it's like wanting to read a whole book and you read the first couple pages and then you just move on to the next book over and over and over again. You're never going to read a full book. You're never going to get the true data about whether that ad was going to work or not. And many times you're probably changing something that could have been amazing. And it's going to cost you time and it's going to cost you money in those situations. So do not be your own worst enemy. Don't make changes too often. I'm not saying never make a change, but don't make changes too often, because a lot of times that can really mess your ads up. And then the last reason that I'll cover today about ads that stop working, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what advertisers do wrong, is platform environment changes. Now, this is stuff that you cannot control as much. It's how much competition is out there. There's seasonality, especially during the holidays. CPMs might go up. The dynamics of bidding and the auctions within the ad ecosystem and things like that that are somewhat out of your control that still affect your delivery of your ads and the performance of your ads. Now, if you're a real pro, you can still navigate all this and be fine. But a lot of people just get messed up and it really hurts them. So just know these are normal things. These are normal challenges of running ads, but they can affect ads negatively. The good news is, though, there's things you can do when these things are happening. You don't have to just sit there and say, oh, darn, that sucks. There's lots of competition. I guess I'm screwed. No. Better ads, better targeting, better data evaluation, better hooks, and on and on. It's a good thing you listen to the podcast because we talk about that stuff a lot each week. So there's things you can do, but just be aware. Those are some of the common reasons why ads may stop working. Now, I want to talk a little bit briefly about what advertisers essentially do wrong quite often when they're looking at ads that are not working. And a common reaction is panic and fear. And I see this way too often. You got an advertiser, they're panicking, their ads aren't working. Maybe they were before, but now they're not. And so they panic, they kill their ads too early. I've probably heard this thousands of times where somebody starts a new ad and it's been running 2 days and they don't have leads yet or they don't have sales yet. And so they think it's a failure and they turn it off. It's literally insane. So killing ads too early, doing it out of panic, doing it out of fear, doing it without a strategy, not letting enough data accrue so that you can actually make good decisions. Another big mistake advertisers make is if something's not working, they just rebuild everything. They just throw it all out the window and start over. It's like, no, there might be times when that's smart, but most of the time, you need to be making little changes and tweaks to identify what the problem was in the first place versus throwing everything out, because you might be throwing some things out that are actually really beneficial to you. And then the other thing that I hear a lot is blaming the platform. Oh, that's, Meta doesn't work. Facebook doesn't work anymore. That's BS. They have billions of users. That's like saying basketball doesn't work. Yes, it works if you're good enough. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed. It doesn't mean you don't have to make changes and adapt and all those types of things. But your customers and clients and potential customers and clients are there because they have billions of users. So make sure that with this kind of stuff, with your ads, you're not reacting emotionally or with panic or fear, but you're reacting with a high level of skill and focus and using data, not emotions, data to make smart decisions. And you're getting enough data to make smart decisions with. And then really to briefly finish this episode, because I try and keep these short for you guys and still give you a lot of value. Couple quick things. How I diagnose an ad that stopped working, for example, is with data. I look at a lot of different things. I could use a whole episode just on this, but just real briefly, I look at if it's saturated or not. Is the frequency high? Did it just quickly stop working? If that's the case, then I know that there's a good chance it's just fluctuating and that it didn't stop working. But if it's been gradual over a longer period of time, maybe it has stopped working. And then I look at what the issues could be. I look at the audience. I look at the creatives. Do we have a strong enough hook? Is this isolated to just one ad or is it happening in the entire account? And there's a lot of things that I look at. So I use strategy. I use data, evaluation, and skill to figure out, hey, is this really not working anymore? Or is there more to the story? And I think that's part of the secret sauce, is being able to identify that. And it doesn't mean that I'm always right. Nobody is always right. But when you use data to make smart decisions, it sure gives you a much better chance of being right a lot more often when you're skilled at using that data. So remember, in summary, if and when you do have ads that are not working, and let's say you've identified that they are not working and it's none of the issues we talked about, it's not fluctuation and it's been gradual and stuff like that, just remember, it doesn't necessarily mean it's completely horrible. Maybe you just need a new headline. Maybe you just need a new hook or a different audience, maybe a new angle, maybe a new image. Test little things first and then use data to make good decisions. I cannot emphasize that enough. So my friends, I hope that was helpful. This stuff is really important. The crazy thing is there's not enough people that talk about data evaluation because it's not as fun to talk about. But the thing is, it's one of the most important things that determines failure or success. So make sure you get good at this stuff. And as always, just a reminder, it's always important to point out that every business is unique. Results can vary. There's no guaranteed outcomes. So always keep that in mind. Episode 456 is in the books. Thank you guys so much for being here. I've got another great one coming for you next Tuesday. Until then, if you have any questions, philgrahamdigital.com is the website, or you can DM me on Instagram at philgrahamdigital, and I'll talk to you next week. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast. Please remember to subscribe and share this with all your friends. For show notes, more tips, and to learn more about Phil, please visit philgrahamdigital.com/podcast.